Part 6. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 51. Chapter 51. How can this guy tell lies with his eyes open? I know everything in my heart. Lee Bikin's voice was very hoarse. Sunian. Why, how can this guy tell lies with his eyes open? What numbers does he have? What numbers does he have? If it weren't for me, this guy might be able to bring the entire company to LAN. What does he have now? Number. Obviously Lee Ji-eunhong doesn't believe in his son either. You know it in your heart. If you knew it, then you wouldn't let me worry so much. Can't you see that I'm such an old man and stop fussing about things? If you keep fussing like this, I will be so old. What to do with the bones? Lee Ji-eunhong coughed heavily after finishing speaking. Seeing Sunian like this, he quickly went up to help the old man. But then Lee Bikin's voice sounded out, Dad, if you really want to pretend, why don't you pretend like this? You're really fake like this. Lee Ji-eunhong. Sunian smiled a little awkwardly. Although the old man's pretense is really a bit fake, there is no need for this guy to say it so directly. In the setting of ordinary novels, a dog-licking male lead like Lee Bikin only has the female protagonist in his mind. Really inhumane. Hearing these thoughts, Lee Bikin almost brought this hateful woman to him and asked her to talk. What does it mean to be inhumane? As long as the old man's acting skills were better and he could see through it, he wouldn't be like this. As an old man, he felt shameless when his son said this directly. He immediately coughed a few times. Well, Nian, I still have to trouble you. Please take good care of this brat. There are still a lot of them now. The mess is waiting for me to clean up, so I'll leave first. After that, he left in a hurry. Sunian understands the old man's current mood very well. After all, in terms of status, the old man is also a domineering president and a person who cares about face. It is a bit unbearable to be undermined by his own son. Sunian withdrew his gaze and then looked at Lee Bikin. He was immediately startled by Lee Bikin's eyes. The look in Lee Bikin's eyes, if you didn't know better, you would think that she owed this guy money. This look makes it look like I did it. It must have been done by the male lead. Why are you looking at me like this? However, Sunian still said with concern on his face, Bikin, you need a good rest now, but don't worry, I will definitely take good care of you in the days to come. When Sunian said this, he deliberately used as loud a voice as possible. I deliberately disgust you, so you don't need me to take care of you, ha ha ha, I am really smart. You take care of me, Lee Bikin said casually. Sunian nodded like a fool. I am your wife, and it is a wife's responsibility to take care of her husband. Of course I have to take care of you. Don't worry, during this period, I will definitely take care of you every step of the way. Then I'll trouble you. Sunian. What the hell? According to the normal plot, this shouldn't be like this. He should tell me to get out. I'm ready to get out. Why doesn't this guy play his cards according to the routine? What, is there something wrong? Sunian quickly shook his head. No, not at all. I'm very happy. I couldn't be happier. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 52. Chapter 52. Do you really think I am in good health? Although Sunian was a little uncomfortable taking care of Lee Bikin. But it's also a good thing to know. After all, the more time you spend with Lee Bikin, the more chances you will have to succeed. Although she only had with Lee Bikin once in her previous life, and she got pregnant with Mo Bao, but the changes in this life are so big, Sunian still feels that if she can have the opportunity to have a few more times, then she will do it a few more times. So after coming out of Lee Bikin's room, she found the family doctor and took Lee Bikin's case study. Are you sure Baikon's body is fine? I don't know what's going on in this life, but Lee Baikon keeps fainting like this. The family doctor replied respectfully, Madam, the young master's health is fine. He just needs to recover calmly for a period of time. Don't get too angry during this period. Sunian didn't say anything, just stared at the family doctor. When the family doctor was stared at by Sunian, a little cold sweat immediately appeared on his forehead. Young lady, I can understand your mood, but what I said is the truth. Even if you give me some courage, then I won't talk nonsense. Sunian felt it made sense when he saw the family doctor like this. At this moment, Sunian suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed. She cleared her throat and then motioned for the family doctor to come closer. The family doctor leaned over obediently. He heard Sunian ask in a low voice, then let me ask you, is Baikon okay? Family doctor. Sunian cleared his throat, that's right, my father-in-law hopes that we can have a child soon. In this case, Baikon can relax a little bit. The family doctor has been working in the Lee family for a long time. The current situation of the Lee family, he knows it more or less, and it is normal for such a situation to happen in a wealthy family. If Baikon is really a bit, then tell me quietly, then we really want to find a way. At this moment, Lee Baikon's cold voice sounded, Sunian. Sunian. Family doctor. Sunian quickly turned around and saw Lee Baikon standing not far away, his face dark. OMG, how long has this guy been standing, how long has he been listening, I won't be finished. Lee Baikon suddenly thought of something that needed to be dealt with and planned to go to the study. However, he did not expect that as soon as he left the room, he heard this woman saying such things to the family doctor. Now Lee Baikon really wants to strangle this woman to death. And he didn't know if it was Lee Baikon's illusion, but he always felt that something was wrong with the way the family doctor looked at him now. So Lee Baikon just looked at him. The family doctor, who suddenly felt his body temperature drop a few degrees, lowered his head subconsciously and silently lowered his sense of existence. He really knew nothing, understood nothing, and heard nothing. Now if Sunian hasn't felt this guy's murderous intention towards her, then she is a fool. What else can I do now? I can only pretend to be confused. So Sunian walked towards Lee Baikon with a flattering smile on his face. Baikon, why are you out? The doctor has said that what you need to do now is to have a good rest. I know your health is usually very good, but now you can't not cherish yourself so much. Do you really think my body is in good shape? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 53. Chapter 53. Are you willing to pay any price? Sunian now looked at the man in front of her. I started to think about what to say. Why was this guy heard? Now how to do? Sunian, you can't be cowardly. You must not be cowardly. You must know that you are his wife. Isn't it normal for a wife to care about her man's physical condition? Lee Baikon, who heard all these thoughts, slowly approached Sunian. Sunian quickly retreated when he saw the menacing person. It's not that she is a coward, it's that this man's aura is really terrifying. She glanced furtively at the place where the family doctor had been standing just now. Not to mention a human being, even the hair on his head is gone. But just when Sunian was distracted, Lee Baikon pushed her directly against the wall. Sunian's heart was really beating like thunder at this moment. Of course it's not shyness, but fear. Why is it romantic for the heroine to be raped by the wall, but I was raped because this guy wanted to kill me. But did this guy hear what I said to the doctor? Why don't you try to mix it up, maybe you can get through it. This is a good idea. Lee Baikon, who had been keeping his eyes on Sunian, was suffocated when he saw the light in the woman's eyes. Like a piece of stardust falling into her eyes. Just for a moment, he retracted his emotions. "You care about me?" "Well, of course I care about you, I care about everything about you," Sunian said with a smile, moving her body without leaving any trace. But Lee Baiken stretched out his hand to block her way. Sunian's body stiffened. "If you really want to know, then why don't you ask me directly? After all, even if you ask the doctor may not know." These words made Sunian look at Lee Baiken in disbelief. What does this guy mean? After all, it's such a private matter, how nice of you to ask me. Sunian's pupils suddenly widened. This guy definitely wants to silence me. After all, men are a bit sensitive in that regard. But it won't work if we continue like this. I have to straighten out the calligraphy treasure. So although Sunian is very scared now, for the sake of his Bao plan, he can only bite the bullet and say, "Really? Can I really ask you? Baiken, can you tell me, your body, did it affect anything? You want to know what impact I've had?" Sunian is still a little sane now. She was not stupid, of course she knew that Lee Baiken could not tell her so simply. Immediately put on a look that looked at death. "I think. Are you willing to pay any price?" These words successfully made Sunian's body stiffen. What does he want to do? Do you want to take this opportunity to kill me? However, he always faints like this, and men are very fragile in this regard. If he really has any problems in that area, he must be very depressed now. In such a depressed situation, Lee Baiken must want to find someone to vent to, or talk to, if you can seize this opportunity. Two paths now lay before her. Sunian's hands unconsciously clenched into fists. A woman is weak by nature, but a mother is strong. For the calligraphy treasure, I will fight hard. Sunian made the decision and said immediately, "I am willing to pay any price." "Who asked me to love you? I love you from the bottom of my heart. No matter what you ask me to do, I am willing to do it." After Lee Baiken heard what Sunian said, he leaned into Sunian's ear. Said in an extremely low and extremely voice, "I feel like I'm full today." End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 54. Chapter 54. Let's see who can beat who in the end. Sunian really doesn't know how to describe her mood at the moment. There were literally 10 million grass mud horses galloping over her head. Is this what I really want to know? This guy is really playing with me. This guy doesn't want to play, so it depends on who plays to the end. Lee Baiken looked at the woman in front of him. He was really doubtful now if this woman really gave birth to a child for him in his previous life. So how smart can that child be? Is this what you want to say? Otherwise you think I want to say something. What do you want to hear? Sunian deliberately sighed deeply. So that's it, but don't worry, I will never tell anyone else. Really? Sunian nodded seriously. I understand your current mood, Baiken. It's a normal thing for us to eat up this song, but you make such a fuss. I can understand this because you have had strong self-control since childhood, but now you can't even control such a simple thing. I can understand your current mood. The corners of Lee Baiken's mouth raised slightly. This woman is really not an ordinary woman. At this moment, Sunian held his hand and looked at him with very sincere eyes. Situations like this are usually caused by brain problems. I have suspected this for a long time. After all, you always faint. Now that I can't even control such a simple thing, it proves from the side that what I thought was right, but don't worry, I won't dislike you. Lee Baiken. After all, I have loved you for so many years, almost to the bone. No matter what you look like, I will never dislike you. Lee Baiken felt that he really underestimated this woman. Just when Lee Baiken was about to continue saying something, Suddenly I felt my lips feel warm. Lee Baiken. Lee Baiken immediately took a few steps back. What have you done? I feel that no matter how much I say, you may not take my words to heart, and you may think that I am lying to you. What Sunian said is called deep love and deep meaning. Hey, let's play with me, right? I'll let you play and I'll charge some interest. Tisk tisk tisk, look at the way he keeps backing away, but think about it, such a licking male lead usually maintains his innocence, and he probably has never been touched by a woman. Actually, when I think about it, I feel that Lee Baiken, the dog-licking male lead, is really pitiable. The male and female protagonists are very affectionate and have every day, but as for him, I feel pitiful when I think about it. Lee Baiken just didn't expect that Sunian would suddenly act like this. It was just a subconscious retreat. After all, anyone in this world who is suddenly touched will behave like this. That's right, he only acted like this because of Sunian's sudden attack. Sunian's confused thoughts only added fuel to the fire. Lee Baiken gritted his teeth and said, Sunian, do you really not know what shame is? Ha ha ha, shame, I gave you a son in my last life, what's the shame? It's just a kiss, so what? But looking at him like this, I finally understand the joy of teasing a good woman. We are husband and wife. We are supposed to be the closest people in the world. What does this have to do with shame? Sunian still had a heartbroken look on his face. He sniffed deliberately, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm too anxious. If you tell me today that you have a problem with your head, it's almost a good progress. I shouldn't expect too much. Sunian has finally passed the level. She knew very well that if she really continued to stay, her life might really be decided here, so after saying this, she ran away. Skip as fast as you can. Lee Baiken laughed angrily when he saw Sunian like this. This woman is really interesting. Isn't it just for fun? Then he, Lee Baiken, will accompany him to the end to see who can outplay whom in the end. Author, warm reminder, children cannot play with fire. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. Isn't it about having a headache? Sunian actually feels that he has lost money. In her last life, she didn't take much advantage of Lee Baiken, a top-notch man. Even though she successfully inherited all of this guy's inheritance after his death, she still felt a bit shortchanged, so Sunian felt that she had to take as much as she could before Lee Baiken died in this life. Anyway, Lee Baiken will die soon. Cannot waste resources. While Sunian was watching TV series in the bedroom for a while, the door of the room rang. She glanced at the time and realized that it was already noon. It was probably the servant who came to call her to eat. You must know that before she wore books, she was just an ordinary social animal. Her feet did not touch the ground every day, and she did not even have time to eat. So when she traveled through her previous life and knew that she had lived a good life, she woke up from an 800 square meter room every day. I don't know how happy I am every day when I have clothes to wear and food to eat. Sunian then stretched, yawned, and walked towards the door. When she opened the door, she saw the servant shivering and subconsciously asked, "What's wrong? Is something wrong with Baiken?" The servant nodded quickly when he heard this. Sunian was heartbroken. The overbearing CEOs in these Mary Sue novels just didn't know any manners. Whenever they were unhappy, they would take out their anger on the people around them. We went to have dinner with the young master just now, but the young master seemed to be in a bad mood. The servant suddenly trembled when he thought of going to invite Lee Baiken just now. His face was so dark that it could drip water and he felt the cold air. So the servants discussed it and decided that they should come to see the young mistress. Seeing the servant's hopeful eyes, Sunian was not stupid. Of course he understood that he wanted to go. If it was normal, she would have gone, but now she had just stained Lee Baiken's innocence. Now Lee Baiken probably wanted to kill her. If she went in front of Lee Baiken now, wouldn't she be looking for death? Sunian hurriedly put her hand on her forehead before the servant asked her to go find Lee Baiken. Maybe it's because Baiken is not feeling well right now, so he has a bad appetite and doesn't want to eat. Now I have a headache. Wait for me to calm down, I'm going. Young lady, are you okay? The servant asked with concern. Do you want me to call the family doctor? Sunian shook his head with a weak look on his face. It's okay, just lie down for a while. When I feel better, I'll go. Suniandu has said this, so what else can the servant say, other than to leave honestly? When Sunian returned to the room, he found a comfortable position again and continued watching the drama. As for whether Lee Baiken eats or not, that's none of her business. And Sunian really felt that Lee Baiken was probably so angry with her now that he was still in the mood to eat. After all, in Mary Sue novels, a dog-licking male supporting character like Lee Baiken must maintain a pure body for the heroine. Now that it has been destroyed by his vicious female supporting character, it shows how big the blow is. Just when Sunian was amused by the content in the TV series, suddenly, a suspicious voice sounded, "Don't you mean you have a headache? Why don't you look like you have a physical problem?" Sunian. She slowly raised her head and saw Lee Baiken standing at the door with a half smile. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. The standard requirement for a male partner is to remain innocent. You don't really want to kill me just by kissing him. This may be the case after all. A licking dog like him values his innocence more than anything else after all. In Mary Sue novels, the standard for male partners is to maintain their innocence. Lee Baiken. Lee Baiken certainly didn't want to settle a score with Sunian, but after hearing the servant say that this woman had a headache, he immediately understood that this woman was faking it. He wanted to expose this woman. But now he regrets coming. Are you really feeling unwell? Sunian sighed. I'm sorry, Baiken, I don't know why I got a headache and made you worry. But you just rolled around in bed. Sunian. The atmosphere was a little awkward for a while. But it's okay. Sunian can be considered a person who has experienced ups and downs. He has no other skills but a thick skin. Baiken, I really didn't expect you to care about me. Sunian coughed a few times again and put on a weak look. Actually, I was excited. After I came back, I tried my best to calm down, but I can't calm down no matter what. I'm thinking, will you be angry, will you hate me, but I'm also thinking, at that time, I really couldn't control myself. I couldn't control myself. Stay with me. At this moment, Lee Baiken really felt that it would be a pity if this woman did not become an actress. It's really absolute. So you're rolling with pain in your heart. Sunian nodded. Well, I'll call the old man now. Lee Baiken wanted to see how far this woman could pretend. Sunian really didn't expect that this guy actually wanted to do this. Subconsciously want to say no. But when the words came to his lips, Sunian thought of something. If I take advantage of this opportunity and pretend to be sick, then I don't have to serve this Lee Baiken? Lee Baiken stopped moving. Then I performed again and was frightened by Lee Baiken. Maybe the old man would still feel sorry for me. This time I was able to get some benefits. Ha ha ha, I am really smart. Lee Baiken immediately hung up the phone. There is no way he would let this woman succeed. Since this woman keeps saying that she wants to take care of him in front of the old man, she must keep her word and take good care of him. Baiken, I'm sorry, I originally planned to take care of you, but I didn't expect my body to be so unsatisfactory. So what do you mean, You don't want to take care of me anymore. Of course, Sunian also knew that he couldn't show it too obviously, so he should push back a little. No, no, why don't I think about it? Even if my body doesn't live up to expectations, your body is more important to me. You don't worry, I will definitely take care of you. Then why are you still dawdling here? Sunian. Although I am pretending, there is no need for this stubborn licker to be so unreasonable. Sunian could only stand up with resentment. Looking at Sunian, who was full of resentment, Lee Baiken's mood suddenly improved a lot. In order to make it easier for you to take care of me, from today on, you will move to my room. Sunian's eyes suddenly lit up at these words. What's going on with this guy? Why did he suddenly ask me to move into his room? Could this guy have discovered my beauty? Ha ha ha, but given his blindness, it's unlikely. It's more likely that he wants to torment me. But it just happened that I could take advantage of this opportunity to eat this man bit by bit. The eyes of the two people met. The corners of Lee Baiken's mouth raised slightly. The new book is being printed. Please save it. If you can vote for recommendation, okay. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 57. Chapter 57. What is this woman thinking about? Sunian knew that Lee Baiken could not simply agree to sleep with him. But when she saw the sofa in front of her, she fell into deep thought. This sofa can fall to the ground even if it is turned over slightly. The key is, she remembers that it was not in Lee Baiken's room before. So, this sofa was obviously just moved in. This guy is really disgusting. Lee Baiken was lying on the bed, and then looked at Sunian standing in front of the sofa. The reason why he let this woman come here. It was entirely because he felt that this woman was living too freely when he couldn't see her. He was still rolling around in bed so happily. You must know that he was very restless because of this woman. In this case, then. Can't let this woman take all the benefits. Didn't this woman take the master's last 1 million? He had to let Sunian know that this million was not so easy to get. What's the matter, don't you want to live here? What's going on with this tone? Why does it feel like living here is like a gift to me? He is the elder, and he is not the emperor. Sunian rolled his eyes behind Lee Baiken's back. After finishing the page, he put on a heartbroken look. Baiken, why do you think so? Why don't I want to live here? I feel so excited now because I have always dreamed of living here. No, I should have lived here originally. From the moment I married you, I have the qualification to live here, but it's just because you have never paid attention to me. Now it's better, I finally got what I wanted. Ugh, I can't stand these words, I really feel sick. As he spoke, he turned around in a circle, showing a look of joy. As expected, it is the standard room of a domineering president. The entire decoration is black and white, just like a dead person's room. In my last life, I put this guy's photo here, which saved decoration costs. Lee Baiken looked around the room. Not to mention, it was really a bit. However, Lee Baiken came to his senses subconsciously. Damn it, he was led astray by this woman. This woman understands something. Lee Baiken turned around and walked towards the bed, lay down on the bed, took the computer and started processing documents. Now that all the actors and actresses have left, Sunian's scene cannot continue. She glanced at the sofa. Lie down resignedly. This sofa is narrow and hard, and there is no way to compare with the big bed in her room. If you torment me like this, I will not deal with you properly. Lee Baiken, who was reading the document, stopped. He wanted to know how this woman would clean up after him. But until very late, Lee Baiken didn't even wait for Sunian to take action. Including Sunian's voice. But he spent the whole night listening to how this woman planned to spend the 1 million the old man gave her. What, to buy bags and shoes? It can be as vulgar as it can be. In the middle of the night, Lee Baikin was successfully awakened by the sound of Sunian falling to the ground. He listened to the sound of Sunian gasping for air and realized that he seemed to have gone too far. But when Lee Baikin planned to get up and let Sunian go back to the room, Sunian's heartfelt voice rang in his mind. Sure enough, it fell off. This is much better than setting an alarm clock. Suddenly, Lee Baikin heard Sunian's footsteps, walking step by step in the direction where he was. He gave up the idea of letting Sunian go back. Lee Baikin wanted to know what this woman was thinking. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 58. Chapter 58. He is a man after all. He has his eyes closed. In the darkness, all sounds seem to be infinitely amplified. 1 step, 2 steps. Then he felt this woman actually climb onto his bed. Doesn't this woman know any sense of shame? Haha, didn't you ask me to stay here? In ancient times, Wei Zheng killed the Dragon King in his dream, so I will sleep with a sleepwalking man. Lee Baikin. Lee Baikin immediately felt a hand touching his back. Little by little. Wow, what a strong arm. What is this bicep? Since this man really doesn't love himself. I'm just going to make this man who doesn't /t love himself pay the price and let him know that a man who doesn't /t love himself is just a rotten cabbage. Just when Lee Baikin was about to stop Sunian from doing anything wrong. Hey, I don't know how long it will take for this guy to wake up, but he will probably drive me away after he wakes up. Hee, I have taken advantage of him, and he can still go back to sleep in my big bed. I am really very smart. Isn't this guy Lee Baikin crazy? It's not like he is being played with in my hands every minute. Also, how can this licking male lead be better than me? This made Lee Baikin sneer in his heart. In matters concerning men and women, will he, a man, still suffer? Sunian's hands became bolder and bolder, and he even touched the front. ABS, I really touched this guy's abdominal muscles, they were really distinct. Wow, it feels really good. Lee Baikin's Adam's apple rolled. He felt desire rising in his heart. But he knew very clearly that he couldn't let this hateful woman succeed. If he let her succeed, then this woman's might rise to the sky. But the plan cannot keep up with the changes. Because Lee Baikin heard Sunian complain. Hey, it's a pity, having a perfect figure is of no use. In the last life, it was not fast and boring. Lee Baikin's face turned dark. Partious like in a male character is worthless, no wonder the heroine dislikes him. Lee Baikin's face turned darker again. After all, the male protagonist is not capable of 7 days and 7 nights. If I were considered the male protagonist, I would be both interesting and useful. Lee Baikin couldn't bear it anymore and immediately grabbed the hand that was doing something wrong. At once he pinned the woman under him. At this moment, Lee Baikin's eyes were filled with anger, and he gritted his teeth and said, Sunian, what are you doing? Sunian's body shuddered subconsciously. But her eyes were still tightly closed. And say it silently in your heart. I am sleepwalking, I'm sleepwalking, yes, as long as I don't open my eyes, there's nothing this guy can do to me. Looking at the tightly closed woman, Lee Baikin smiled coldly. Pretending, he wanted to know how far this woman could pretend. He slowly came closer. Sunian also felt Lee Baikin's breath, and her body became more and more tense. On a night like this, what does he want to do to me? But it's just that I want and a but. Although this guy is short-lived, he is still a man after all, and there is no way he will make no move. Lee Baikin. At this moment, Lee Baikin was really in a dilemma. If he advances, if he retreats, he will be looked down upon by this woman. Had he known earlier, he should have woke up the moment this woman climbed into his bed. However, listening to Sunian's messy words, Lee Baikon's eyes fell involuntarily, taking in the entire scenery. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 59. Chapter 59. What is this guy doing? Moonlight shines in through the glass window. The woman shining under him. It is like a layer of radiance on a woman's body. For a while, Lee Baikon was a little panicked. But he quickly came to his senses. Because Sunian said in her heart, "What is this guy doing? What does he want to do? Does he want to hit me? Lee Baikon. What kind of thoughts can he have when a woman has such messed up thoughts?" But just when Lee Baikon wanted to expose Sunian, who was pretending to be asleep, he suddenly noticed that her body was shaking slightly. At this moment, the distance between the two people is only a short distance. Even each other can hear each other's thoughts. Especially when Lee Baikon's fingertips touched Sunian's skin, her body couldn't help but tremble a few times. Of course Lee Baikon felt it. He would like to know. How far can this woman pretend to be? Sunian felt the man's breath fall on her face, and her heart couldn't help but feel warm. She is not a fool, of course she understands that this guy is hanging on her. When 3 minutes later, Sunian finally opened his eyes. For some reason, Lee Baikon suddenly froze when he saw her eyes. "Where am I?" Sunian said in a daze. Looking confused, if it were someone else, seeing Sunian like this, he might really think he had just woken up. "Where did you say you were?" Lee Baikon asked warmly, almost like a wolf coaxing his prey into his hunting circle. Sunian did not speak immediately, but looked at the person blankly for about a minute. Then she stretched out her hand. "Baikon, am I dreaming? You are all in my dreams now. Has my love for you reached this level? Really? You love me so much?" Lee Baikon followed the woman's words. He wanted to see what this woman wanted to do. But he didn't expect that the next moment, Sunian would suddenly move. And while Lee Baikon was distracted, he knocked him down and pressed on him. This is a complete reversal of the situation. "Lee Baikon. If I'm not wrong, this is waiting for me to wake up, ha ha ha, as long as I don't admit it, I'm still in a dream." "Sure enough," I heard Sunian say, "since it's my dream now, then it's up to me to make the decision. You know that in the real world, I can't even get 3 meters away from you. I finally dreamed about you. I have to hurry up, Chance." The next moment, a tearing sound was heard in the room. Lee Baikon's shirt was torn directly. I don't know if it was Lee Baikon's illusion, but why did he feel like there was a wolfish light in this woman's eyes? He grabbed Sunian's wrist directly. "Woman, don't go too far. He is indeed a domineering president. Woman, don't go too far." The words "don't go too far" actually came up to me. But if I don't go too far, won't I go too far? I went too far today. Baikon, you are in my dream now. Don't worry, even if you scream your throat out today, it will be useless. After Sunian said this, he directly kissed Lee Baikon's lips. Lee Baikon turned his head to avoid it. But his face still didn't look any better because he could feel the woman's soft body pressing against his. The collision of iron and cotton. But at this moment, the woman who was pressing on him and causing mischief suddenly stood up and left. Like the sudden disappearance of the violent wind and rain, Lee Baikon didn't even have time to react. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 60. Chapter 60. He seems to have been tricked by this woman again. Lee Baiken was lying on the bed. I didn't react for a moment. It took a long time to react. Lee Baiken looked at the mess around him. He seems to have been tricked by this hateful woman again. Lee Baiken tore off his clothes as if to vent his anger and threw them to the ground. This hateful woman. Then he lay on the bed again. I don't know why, but his mind kept seeing this woman, Sunian, riding on top of him and saying all kinds of bold things. The result was that Lee Baiken tossed and turned all night without falling asleep. The next day, Lee Baiken's face could not be darker. He really wanted to know what the woman Sunian was planning next, but no matter what her plans were, he would not let this woman reap the rewards. But he waited and waited, but still did not wait for the woman Sunian to appear. This made Lee Baiken a little curious. Could it be that this woman suddenly felt ashamed and felt that the things she did yesterday were not in a good light, so she did not dare to come to see people? But as soon as this idea appeared in Lee Baiken's mind, he was immediately dismissed. Haha, Sunian has a sense of shame. Even if the sun rises from the west, that woman Sunian will not have any so-called shame. Lee Baiken estimated that Sunian deliberately didn't want to appear in front of him, and then waited for him to take the initiative to find her. In this case, Sunian would be extremely proud. In this way, Lee Baiken was restless for a whole day. Finally in the evening, I decided to go find Sunian. The reason he gave himself was that yesterday Sunian clearly said that he would take care of himself in every detail, so how could he not follow through on his words the next day? That's right, this reason is perfect. When Lee Baiken came to Sunian's room again for a legitimate reason, I found something was wrong today. It seemed as if the whole room was lifeless, completely different from yesterday. Lee Baiken walked to the bed and saw Sunian curled up in the quilt with a pale face. There was even a trace of pain on his face. Sunian, Lee Baiken shouted. But Sunian did not respond. He sat on the edge of the bed and sat for a while. I want to hear what Sunian has to say. But this time he couldn't even hear his heart. It was then that Lee Baiken realized something was wrong, and immediately lifted the quilt and picked the person up. Sunian, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? Sunian finally opened his eyes in a daze. Seeing that Sunian was a little energetic, Lee Baiken breathed a sigh of relief. Please bear with me, I will take you to the hospital right away. But just when Lee Baiken finished speaking, Sunian grabbed his hand and stopped him. I'm fine, I don't need to go to the hospital. How can you not go to the hospital when you are like this? Although Sunian is usually very troublesome, Lee Baiken clearly knows that this woman's nature is not bad, and the old man really dotes on this Sunian. No matter what, in any way, he couldn't let Sunian Kong have any problems by his side. But the next moment, Lee Baiken's face was full of embarrassment. Because Sunian said, there's really no need to go to the hospital because I have those special days every month. Lee Baiken, as an adult man, immediately understood what this meant. He quietly put Sunian back into bed and covered her with the quilt. Then he said very seriously, drink more hot water. End of this chapter.